All right, thank you all for joining us today as we're going to talk about self-advocacy skills for students who are deaf and hard of hearing. Students who know how to self-advocate have an important skill that supports lifelong learning success. Yet few children actually are taught how to understand their needs and communicate those needs to others. I felt like this was a really important quote to share with you because many of you know that our deaf and hard of hearing students need to have, they learn through direct instruction and direct communication. It's really hard for students who are deaf or hard of hearing to pick up that incidental learning like their hearing peers do. As I was preparing this presentation, I wanted to think, well, how can I explain to you what self-advocacy is? And the best definition that I found was from Wright's Law. And I'm going to read this here for you. Self-advocacy is learning how to speak up for yourself, making your own decisions about your own life, learning how to get information so that you can understand things that are of interest to you, finding out who will support you in your journey, knowing your rights and responsibilities, problem solving, listening and learning, reaching out to others when you need help and friendship, and learning about self-determination. I felt like this was a wonderful definition because it was really all-encompassing of various facets of a person's life, such as school, social and peers, work, and even family. I also want to share with you the stages of advocacy. As our children are younger, it's our responsibility as parents to advocate for our children. And so that's when we're talking about this first stage here. So parent-driven and child-reactive. We're making the decisions and the child is responding to that. As your child gets a little bit older, they'll be able to give you some input, but as parents, we're still driving that. And then the next step is really when we're kind of equal, so parent-driven and child-driven, where we're openly communicating about what we want, in particular in school. So what do we want that IEP to look like? And then we will move on to a child-driving advocacy and parent-giving input. So we're going to be able to give some feedback. And then this last one that I know as a parent myself, this is really scary. So child-driven and parent-reactive. But that's the ultimate goal. We want our child to be able to self-advocate for himself or herself, and then we want to be able to respond to that and support. When I go to an IEP meeting and I'm working with parents, I often say to them, nobody is a better advocate for your child than you. But really that's not true. The person who is a better advocate for your child is your child. So we want to make sure that our children have the skills to advocate for themselves throughout life. So why is self-advocacy important? Like that initial quote, it leads to independence. And this is going to be independence within the learning community, so in school, in elementary school, on through college. It's going to lead to independence with peers and within the community. It gives your child a way to be an active participant in his or her life. And being an active participant brings increased success and increased happiness and satisfaction. Becoming a self-advocate is really kind of a prerequisite, hopefully. I think that by the time a child is moving into transition age of 14 years old or 16 years old, we want to make sure that they have some self-advocacy skills, a good foundation. And then transition will also help hone those self-advocacy skills as they're preparing for their post-secondary options. So when do we teach self-advocacy? Really, we want to start as early as possible. When I think about starting early, I also think about the 2-year-old child who has just learned how to say no and was responding when mom and dad say, it's time to take a bath, and they say no. So it's frustrating as a parent to hear no, but it's also a great developmental milestone because your child's beginning to self-advocate. Our tools and checklists that I'm going to share with you later. Many of these are designed to start within preschool, and most of them start within kindergarten, so kindergarten through 12th grade. But yes, we can start as early as preschool. And also, self-advocacy really never stops. I know that even as an adult, I'm still learning things and ways that I can self-advocate for myself. So we're going to teach our children to be self-advocates at any age, at any time, and anywhere. This may be at school, it may be in the community, it may be at home. So how do we teach self-advocacy? Number one, I think we as parents have to have high expectations, and we have to be able to communicate those with our children. So, early on, we're telling our children, I want you to learn how to drive. I want you to be able to live independently. We're going to talk about those things with our kids and ask them how we can help them succeed. We also need to make sure our children understand about their hearing loss. They need to be able to understand this in order to explain it to others and to get what they need. We need to educate our students about their rights at school, their rights within the community. And it's really important, too, that we are modeling self-advocacy skills for children. So our kids are watching us all the time out in the community. So, when we have a stranger come up to us at the park and ask us about, what's that on your child's head? And we have to tell them about the cochlear implant or the hearing aid that they're wearing. They hear that. They see that. And then I think another great role model is a deaf mentor. So as parents, we have some skills that we can help our children explain their disability, help them understand what they need. But in some ways we are limited because not all of us are deaf ourselves. And so we may not have that firsthand experience. And having a deaf mentor is a great way for a child to reflect back and say, what do I do when I'm at my first job and I have this communication barrier? What are some ways that I can overcome that? Another great way we can teach self-advocacy, especially with our younger children, is through role-playing. And this can be done at school through part of the IEP. This can be done at home. This can be done through reading books together, too. Reading books about a child and what would you do, and then discuss it. What would you do in that situation? And then also I think it's very important is reflection. So when an opportunity has come up, when you have seen your child be a great self-advocate, or when they say, Mom, I think I messed this up. What could I have done differently? So we need to be able to learn from our successes and then improve upon our challenge, or improve upon our challenges too. This is a great, I found these decision-making steps that I thought were great for direct teaching of our child. So questions as we're teaching our children to become advocates. So, help them understand what is the decision that you need to make and what decisions could you make, and then discuss each choice. So what are the pluses and the minuses? Pick the best choice that is right for you. So we want to help our children feel comfortable and confident in making the choice that works for them. And then, like I said earlier, kind of reflection or evaluate. So did I make the best choice? Talk through with your child. How did that choice work for you? Would you have maybe tried something different the next time? And these steps are actually from the Minnesota Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. So some areas that we consider for writing self-advocacy goals, one would be understanding hearing loss, so understanding your disability. We want to talk about, we can have some goals for assistive technology management. So we can work with kindergartners or first graders to understand, my hearing aid battery just died, and have them feel comfortable going to the teacher and saying, I need a new battery. This can also come in managing FM systems, so picking it up in the classroom in the morning, making sure at the end of the day it's getting recharged. Communication strategies. So some of these areas would be children understanding preferential seating and how that affects them and what their individual preference is. You know, explaining to teachers or friends, please look at me when you're talking to me. If a student's using an interpreter, understanding that they have choices in the way the interpreter is relaying information to them. Maybe they like their sign language in a Pidgin Signed English form. Maybe they like more American Sign Language. Maybe they're using Signed Exact English, and they want to be able to communicate that with interpreters, what their preference is. Resources and technology. This is looking at within your school district, within your community, within your home. So who can help me? Where can I find help? And, you know, how do I use technology? Are there apps on my phone that I can use to relay information to a stranger? Is it gathering, you know, when I'm out in the community, a paper and a pen to relay my message to somebody who doesn't understand sign language? We also want our children to understand about their own personal and interpersonal skills, such as, this one's really important too, identifying feelings and being able to explain how those feelings are affecting them. It's really important learning how to interact with others, especially through teamwork in school projects. As children are moving into adulthood and finding employment opportunities, there's teamwork involved there. Even understanding their own study skills and habits. Within educational planning too, we want them to be a self-advocate, such as coming to an IEP meeting and actively participating. And we can bring students into the IEP meeting early. Maybe your child isn't there for the whole meeting if they're in 3rd grade, but maybe they can come in and relay a little bit of information, or give you some feedback, like, I like to have my speech time during recess, or I like to be pulled out for my speech services. Give them a little bit of choice and let them plan with you. As they're moving on through school, letting them select classes, such as in high school, and as we're going into transition planning, their career planning, let them be an active part of career planning too. And the last one's really important too, about safety and awareness. Children need to know when to seek help. So we want to make sure that our deaf children are understanding when to seek help and how to seek help. Do they know how to dial 911? Do they, you know, some areas VRS works with 911 and other areas it does not. What options do they have to connect with emergency service providers? Teaching them about stranger danger too, that is all very important. Examples of self-advocacy goals on an IEP that we have seen, I think I mentioned this earlier, but hearing aid use. So sometimes we'll see making sure that a younger student, making sure that they're wearing their hearing aids consistently, making sure that if their battery is dying, that they're going to a teacher. FM system use, same thing, making sure that each teacher is using it, making sure that it's getting charged overnight. Understanding and identifying preferential seating needs. So sometimes in order to really let our students know what works best for them, we need to let them make what we may consider bad choices at times. So maybe they want to sit in the back of the room that day, and maybe the teacher thinks that's a really bad idea because they're not going to be able to hear me. Well, we need to let them try, because number one, that's them self-advocating and say, hey, I want to try sitting in the back. But we need to let them figure out if that works or if that doesn't work. And so we want to make sure that we're checking in with the student and see, did that work? But give them the opportunity to try new things and help them discover what works well. Helping a student understand, you know, what's quote unquote a good or bad listening environment for them. One classroom may be really small room, maybe a small group, and so they can hear really well. But they need to also be able to identify in the lunchroom when everybody is talking and there's a lot of background noise, it's really hard for me. And this is really important too, for students to learn to ask for clarification or to have something repeated, such as directions, if they're unsure or if they feel that they've missed that. Oftentimes students don't like to ask because they feel like they might be bothering the teacher, they feel like their peers may be laughing at them, but we want them to feel confident and have the ability to ask for clarification. Again, coming back to communication needs, so, with their peers, if they're out on the playground, if they're meeting a new friend, we want them to be able to explain to staff and teachers what their communication needs are. And then as a child's getting older, so really being able to identify personal challenges that are caused by hearing loss. So is this, within the workplace? What kind of barriers may come up? And then discussing and identifying their personal feelings. Again, sometimes feelings are hard to label. It's very direct teaching of feelings. And so we may see this a lot with children who have some behavior issues. We always want to look and see, are they being able to express themselves clearly, and can that come through in a self-advocacy kind of goal? Now remember, if we're writing self-advocacy goals, they still need to follow that IEP format, and they need to be SMART goals. So specific, measurable, using action words. You need to be realistic and time limited. Self-advocacy at home and out in the community is also really important. So ways that we can help our children at home very early on, so teaching them to care for their hearing aids or their cochlear implant, teaching them to charge their batteries overnight, letting them put their hearing aids on by themselves. If you're going out to a restaurant, let them order their own food. If they're at home as a teenager, let them cook their own food. Make sure they know how to order a pizza, just like their siblings are doing. Waking up on their own, using an alarm clock. This is important as a child is getting older. They ideally won't be living at home forever, right? So they're going to be going off to college, or they're going to be working. We want them to be able to have those independent living skills. Helping them understand how to schedule a doctor's appointment, whether or not they need an interpreter, and how to overcome that challenge if maybe the doctor who's never had to use an interpreter before, not understanding their responsibility. And this one can be really hard, explaining communication needs to extended family. I think this is really important where, we can model that for our children. And sometimes those are hard conversations, and sometimes family members just need reminding. Some of my favorite tools and checklists that I like to use for developing self-advocacy goals or checking in and seeing where students' strengths are listed right here. And I'm going to show these to you here in just a second. We have a little bit of time. So one of them is the Minnesota Compensatory Skills Checklist for students with hearing loss. That should say hearing loss, I'm sorry. I like this. This inventory is from kindergarten through 12th grade, and it's designed to be a comprehensive report that every year you can fill in and add information to. And so that can follow the student through the years. The informal inventory of independence and self-advocacy skills for deaf and hard of hearing students. I like this form because it's actually designed where we fill out and we give a rating and an average score. So we have every member of the IEP team complete this inventory, including the student, so they can self-report what they think they do well. Parents, teachers, so the deaf education teacher, the gen ed teacher, even the interpreter is completing this form. And then we're going to take an average and see where the student's strengths are and where their weaknesses are, that we can include some additional skills in the IEP. A guide to self-advocacy skills development. This is from Success for Kids with Hearing Loss. And this is actually one that is designed to be from preschool through 4th grade. And then if you have not seen this one, the Transition Skills Guidelines is from the Clare Center. And I will show you this one. This is a K through 12 checklist, or guideline rather, and it's broken out into all kinds of different categories. So despite the fact that it says transition, Don't be worried. It's not only for transition. It's really preparing our children for transition. Can you see this form? I'm sorry, hold on one second. I'm guessing that you cannot. Uh-oh, I'm sorry, guys. Oh, Janelle says yes, you can see the form. Okay, great. This form here is the Minnesota form that I referenced, and this is the very front form where I said, you know, we're keeping track of it year by year to go through it. This is the informal inventory of independence and self-advocacy skills. This is broken up into different categories. So student independence, services, and accommodations, peer interaction within the community, and then there's a section here for students who use interpreters. This is the preschool through 4th grade checklist. And then the Clare Center checklist, I want you guys to just see this website, because if you want to see this guideline, you have to come to the website and then click on Transition Skills Checklist. And then they will email that document to you. If you would like some additional resources for self-advocacy, here's the list here. So our Hands and Voices chapters in Ohio and Michigan, and our headquarters, and our ASTER program, Success for Kids with Hearing Loss, and the Clare Center National Deaf Education Project. Those are all wonderful resources. And then if you have questions, I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody. If you give me just a second here. All right, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Tabby, this is Janelle. Can you hear me?
I can.
I do have a question. I think that maybe on those that are listening, their minds. Who do you see helping with advocacy goals within the IEP team? Like, you know, who is that mostly that may step up or be an ally for that?
I think a lot of that may depend on what the actual goal is. So if we're talking about maybe understanding your hearing loss, understanding parts of the ear and your specific hearing loss, that may be the educational audiologist who can work through that goal and explain it to the child. If we're talking about communication strategies, maybe it's the speech language pathologist. It could be the teacher of the deaf. If you have a deaf mentor as part of a related service, they could be working through that, and definitely the transition specialist if you have a student who's within transition age.
Thank you. That helps.
Other questions? If you are looking very specifically to write some self-advocacy goals for your child and help develop that at school within the IEP format, please, I know that both the Ohio and Michigan ASTER programs have advocates that are there and willing to help you do that. So please feel free to reach out to us. And, let me get you that contact information. Here you go. Just so you know, later today we will be sending out a survey. If you could just provide us with a quick feedback of how the session went today, so we can continue to improve our webinars, Lunch and Learn. We will post this recording onto YouTube so you can review it again if you need to. And then I will also send out the links to these checklists and guides that I provided in the presentation today, so you can look at those if you're interested.
Excuse me, Tabby, this is Janelle. We do have one more question. It says, any suggestions on working with the schools to build safety skills with children?
Yes, I think that if you haven't had a chance to talk about it with the IEP team yet, I think it's for sure a concern that you would want to bring up with them. Within the Clare Center guidelines, there is a topic for safety and awareness. That would give some good guidelines on, depending on the age of your child, on how to start. Depending on what those specific safety skills are, we might have some additional resources or community members who could help out with that too.
And this is Janelle. I want to also chime in. Our project through Hands and Voices may be a good area for people to get resources. In particular, they have a lot of great videos that you could show not only to the children but also to the staff to help, build those safety skills with the children in the classroom.
Great, that's a good point, Janelle. Any other questions? Janelle, I know you're fielding the question box for me, so feel free to let me know.
This is Janelle. The only other question was someone wanted to expand the screen, and I think that it's as expanded as you can get, correct?
It is, yes. I'm sorry. Well, thank you all very much for joining us today. Oh, Janelle, I'm sorry. Did you have more?
Nope. This is Janelle. I was just going to say it's 12:30. So.
We are right on time. So please feel free, if you have additional questions, like I said, reach out to Janelle or I, and we will be willing to help you navigate through this with your IEP team.
Thank you, Tabby. Thank you, everyone that participated.
You're welcome, and don't forget to join us in November. We're going to talk about communication planning. Janelle's going to lead that Lunch and Learn for us.
Yes, please join us then. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.